Thank you, friends, thank you. Remember that much of what you have described was not simply my own achievement. How can any of us forget the work of the one who has kept us safe through these testing years? In fact, why is he not here with us? You ordered that Tullus stay with his command, General. Tullus? I'm speaking of Mars. I'm speaking of the gods who have blessed us in return for finally acknowledging their reign with all our hearts and minds. In the light of such figures, the work of a single man is insignificant. How do you think Tullus has lasted so long? In fact, hear this. I order that in place of Senator Tullus, we place an idol to Mars so that he might better focus his attention on the proceedings of his esteemed people. I second the General's motion, but might I suggest the idol be placed in the centre of the podium? To place it in the gallery suggests an equality with men, does it not? Oh, no space for that. I like to move. And I assure you that Mars is not one for speeches. Why place him at the podium? He needs only to hear of who threatens us, and then he shall be away in our defence. Ah yes, I see your point. I shall withdraw my amendment. There's something you should all know about me, something I share in common with Holy Mars. We both know that men cannot dedicate themselves to all gods equally. Before we vote, I would like to speak specifically to those of you who do not see reason to worship the celestial gods in the fashion I would encourage. There are many paths to righteousness in this life, that we know. And we know of a great many gods, powerful and mundane, who can guide us along that path. But there is a certain value in walking a path that is paved in stone, marked with milestones, a path that greater men than you have prepared so that all might be able to achieve what they did in life. This is what we're doing by looking to the past, looking to the world that Rome conquered and not the one it is losing. That is how we will survive while others fall into the mires of the wilderness, trying to cut trails with foreign tools and nefarious guides. So while there are many paths, true, please do note how one in particular shines with 1,000 torches and the promise of civilization. And note that your proximity to this path will affect your likelihood to receive the responsibility that the path's imbued greatness can support. Hello and welcome back to Fields of Mars. In the previous episode, Tullus was able to resist an Abdanian invasion, mainly thanks to the skilled use of javelins from the top of a barricade, eliminating their general early in the battle. Meanwhile, Constantinus was able to completely annihilate a small Saxon invasion. The Abdanians came back to test Tullus for a second time though. This time he was prepared, he killed their general at sea, and overall it went a lot better even than the first time and the enemy were wiped out. Constantinus went back north to take out a small Pict army, and then we started a war with the Caledonian Separatists to support the loyal Caledonians, and we quickly pushed them away, so we'll just have to see how it continues. Here in the next turn, I noticed that the Caledonian Separatists have actually started a new horde over there. It's in the sea for whatever reason, with just a couple of units, so nothing to worry about for now, but we'll need to keep that in mind. So I wanted to look north, actually looking for the rest of the Separatists, but what I really noticed was the fact that the Pict capital isn't hugely heavily defended. They only have half a stack in there right now, since we recently defeated their main force just further south. So this is a potential opportunity. It has a very big garrison, which will mean they do have over a stack of troops in total, but Constantinus has high quality armoured troops, so that doesn't mean we're going to be outmatched here. I move up to begin a siege, and the enemy just have a slight advantage, so it's nothing too bad and something we can certainly overcome on the battlefield. So what I want to do is get 1 turn's worth of siege equipment together, and then we'll make a siege assault and try and just take out the Picts really quickly while we're up here. But it doesn't go as I had planned, because the Caledonian Separatists make a comeback. They were up there to the northwest in the fog of war. They attack Constantinus, and this is a potentially useful battle for us because the main force of the Picts, led by their high-level king, is being drawn out into the fight, but the garrison isn't. So this is actually a chance for us to take out the Picts inside the city, meaning they'll only have their garrison left over if we win the battle and can deal with the Separatists here. They've mostly just got loads of spearmen, but a few unique units, lots of skirmishers, and even some crossbowmen, a pretty decent unit in there. So as the battle gets started, I've got a very deep formation with half of the army facing backwards, because I thought what might happen here is the Pict army will come onto the field behind me based on how the campaign map was arranged, but actually it's off to the side, so I didn't need to worry about that. So we'll quickly need to start forming up to deal with this, because now we're going to be attacked from two different directions that basically have a 90-degree angle of separation between them, which is really inconvenient actually. It'd almost be better to be attacked from behind, because at least to be able to fight them quicker. The enemy have onagers who begin their assault, so we can't stand too still right now. We want to get things going because we're going to be bombarded the longer we wait. We do have onagers ourselves though, so we can move them up to start firing back at the enemy's advancing troops. And fortunately the enemy don't wait to use their onager advantage. They are going to charge in for us and take some losses to my onagers along the way. Leading the attack are these Javcav, who are currently doing quite a lot of damage to this flank protection unit of Auxilia, who are trying to fold to stop them, but they actually went around before they completed the order and still got a flank attack on them. Not a huge problem though, because the large depth of this formation means I can just deploy another spear unit to move in, and that Javcav unit is going to be annihilated as a result. Speaking of annihilation, the front line starting to look a little bit thin as the onagers are just punching holes through it, plus now the enemy skirmishers coming up to engage with us. I've got my skirmishers out front to fight with them, but I'm going to bring them back pretty quick because the enemy looked like they were just going to do an infantry charge. And actually kind of usefully, in a ruthless way, the skirmishers take a lot of the enemy's javelins as they run away, protecting the heavier infantry from having to take it. So now, because the Caledonian Separatists are going to be attacking basically along my flank, I'm having to form this bowl formation very quickly, so I'm getting rid of my formation's depth now in order to try and protect various flanks at various points, just so that we don't get completely surrounded. So now I need to hope that the front line will hold strong. One problem that may prevent this is the fact the enemy have deployed berserkers here, which are pretty much the perfect counter to Auxilia, because they're super high attack, low defense, the opposite of Auxilia. And in situations like this where units with opposite stats fight each other, both sides will just be wiped out, which is a bigger problem for me than it is for the enemy, since they have such a big numerical advantage. Their skirmishers too causing trouble, stopping my guys from going out to flank attack them, because they'll just be bombarded with crossbow bolts and javelins. This unit in the centre, which wasn't engaged, is essentially trying to draw the fire of all those skirmishers, and there's a lot of that fire. I thought the Testudo might nullify much of it, but they still got wiped out to the enemy's attack, so that's unfortunate. Now a gap's going to open up there, and a gap opens up when the Caledonian Separatist forces just overwhelm our men with sheer numerical advantage, all of their infantry punching through, including some Celtic warriors, an axe unit, which is good against Auxilia, and they're going to take out the unit next door as well as a result of that, which is terrible news. I did manage to attack the Pict's king with cavalry and some swordsmen. The objective of killing him is super important because he's really high level, so taking him out will remove bonuses that his troops are receiving in battle, and of course for future battles against the Picts, which I do hope there are going to be. The problem is the enemy are starting to gain an advantage here. Look how many of my units are considering routing, as they're just overwhelming us. We've killed quite a lot of them, don't get me wrong, but there's a lot of them on top of that, so we need to kill a lot more, and we don't have the formation advantage to do it. I tried to send out my cavalry to clear out the enemy's skirmishers, but a single volley from a unit of crossbowmen completely leveled the cavalry unit as it came in to engage those archers in melee, so they just disappeared off the face of the battle, leaving really only a few pockets of resistance left for our army.
Tell them to stay put! They're in Mars's gaze! Buy us time to rout their left. Go, tell them quickly. Wait, no, wait. You'd best stay next to me. All down the line. Mars, what do we do for such failings to befall us? Do the petty gods of these savages restrain you? Answer me, Mars! Nias, take 5 men, and kill that Pict king at all costs, you hear me? Centurion, Captain, hey, listen to me. We're getting out of here. Stay behind me and give us cover. Come on, let's get moving. As long as they don't have hidden horses, we'll be away in time. Mars, if you can hear me, I leave many warriors on the field today, many brave and true men of your legion. Take them as a sacrifice to you, so that such loss may never be felt again.
With things looking bad, it's time for damage control effectively. We've got 2 units holding off pretty much the entire Caledonian Separatist army, with 2 more units fighting victoriously against some skirmishes, after which they'll be able to help out with that. And all of that is just to distract the enemy from the fact that we have the Pict king in battle with our cohorts, a fight that we should win. So the hope here is we can take out this really high level officer, which will in the future pay dividends, but right now probably going to have no effect, especially because most of the Pict's army has been defeated. Constantinus taking a unit of spears away from the fight to get closer to the edge of the map, so that he'll be able to retreat once things look completely hopeless. But we did manage to take out that Pict warlord, so in there is the king. You see him with his winged helmet here, and he's taken out by this cohort with a nice stab through the face that somehow decapitates him. So that is a minor victory among what is otherwise a defeat. We can see just a couple of our units still holding strong against the entire enemy army, who aren't doing a very good job of surrounding them, starting to get their act together now. But their valiant effort has perhaps bought us an easier time in a future battle. I also had 1 unit chasing off the enemy skirmishers to make that fight last longer, but the unit doing the chasing is effectively sacrificed because they're going to have the same treatment as our equites from earlier. You chase 1 unit and the other unit gets a chance to top and shoot you, so if you chase that, then the original unit will shoot you, and basically that unit is taken down without ever managing to make contact. This battle is now coming to an end. We did manage to evacuate a unit of levies sneaking through the trees on the other flank from where the battle was at this point, and of course we've got Constantinus with a decently healthy unit of auxilia protecting him, sneaking to just hide near the edge of the battle, waiting for more forces to catch up, as we had a couple of other units we were able to evacuate after the defeat of the Pict's king, and now they are going to get out of there, and 1 unit slightly late to the edge of the map actually just shatters, because seeing your men leave counts as army losses and they lose their morale. So that concludes the battle. It's a valiant defeat for our forces. We did a lot of damage to the enemy, but that doesn't really matter because we've been almost completely wiped out, and I must say that was not expected. The auxilia performed worse than I thought they would originally, and I think the enemy's skirmishing units and heavier or medium infantry performed better than expected. You can see some of the stats there on the right. The enemy's ranged units getting loads of kills against us. I think they were just firing at us through those whole melees and bringing us down, even though they were also killing their own side. So there's the results for our army. Pretty much nothing left. Constantinus alive at least, and a couple of units to help him escape. The Caledonian Separatist army didn't lose any entire units, which is disappointing. The Pict army lost a few. So the Picts won't be coming after us, and the Caledonian Separatists don't come after us either, so that's very fortunate. It's also fortunate that they go last in the turn order, because if they had gone before the Picts army might have actually come after me then and hired some mercenaries to finish Constantinus off. So now at the start of the next turn, our main priority is going to be, of course, just getting away from the whole situation. We need to get back to our own territory to start restoring our troops, recruiting more men, and getting out of the north for winter, of course. We want to get back to one of our towns to avoid attrition. So we can make it back into our territory in 1 turn, which is fortunate, and immediately we'll start recruiting new units. We'll get some more auxilia on the scene, plus the units we have left will start replenishing. So now, moving on, we get a bit of bad news that may or may not have consequences. The Angles decide to declare war on us. So this is going to be a similar situation to the Saxons or Franks, where they might just suddenly show up out of the fog of war with a naval invasion and land it somewhere. So we'll just have to be aware of that, but really there's nothing we can do to explicitly prepare because we won't know if anything's actually going to happen. So we make it into winter. The Caledonian Separatists have moved back down, perhaps to challenge the Caledonians, as they probably originally intended, and we've made it back to Aboricum, where we can continue our recruitment and avoid any attrition for winter. So we'll try and get the army back up to full strength. Another thing I wanted to do was see if anyone would accept peace. The Abdanians say no, the Picts say no. Next I wanted to try the Caledonian Separatists, who also say no, and finally I thought maybe the Angles would have second thoughts about their declaration, and they say no. So kind of what we expected there. Now we immediately find out why the Abdanians wouldn't go to peace. They've been preparing an invasion for the last few turns. I thought they'd been quiet for a while, and here they are ready to attack once again. Tullus is still there in Segontium to defend against them, and the enemy army is actually smaller than previous invasions they've tried to bring onto Segontium, but I think they've just got more higher quality troops, so the balance bar is actually probably a bit worse than it's been before. But of course what we're going to do is the standard tactic. So as the battle starts, our two ships sail out to find the enemy's commander. Luckily he was poorly guarded, so both were able to make contact without taking ranged fire or anything like that. We'll jump onto the enemy ship and start a melee combat, taking advantage of the enemy's seasickness. One of our boats was routed in that combat, so that wasn't very nice, but the other unit was able to kill their general. So this is, as always, an amazing start. Their land army's morale is going to be out the window, and now we're going to do our traditional scout equite tactics to take them out. I thought for a moment that the madness would come to an end, but then I received a message from Consul Constantinus confirming he had escaped. If he had died, I think there was a real chance that we could have begged for the Emperor's forgiveness. But now, in defeat, he will simply redouble his efforts to form the whole island into a gigantic fortress for his own protection. Every time an invasion is repelled, more time is bought for our master to scheme new ways for his vision to alter centuries of history. And the people love it. They do now, at least. Safety is a price they will accept for any tribulation. New gods, a new king, and a new empire by any reasonable account. And I still don't truly understand why I allow myself to be the champion of all this. So I'm not going to spend long on this battle. One thing you might imagine I did is use the same barricade tactic as previously with the levies, just annihilating units that come up to try and break down the barricade, and several units came up to give it a go. Here's the last of them, using up some of the last of my ammo on them. This unit actually decided to not attack the barricade as soon as it arrived, but in attempting to go away just showed its back to the levies, who then cut them down, so that was all fine. There are some cavalry taking out some of the enemy skirmishers who had been supporting that attack and even killed some of the levies on the barricade, but that's the end of their career. The enemy's infantry have landed in two waves, basically. One wave coming in now, one wave already in combat. And for the guys already fighting, the cavalry will now appear from around corners to just strike into their ranks, and we see massive numbers of the enemy smashed to pieces by the attack, and now their morale is going to shatter, especially with the loss of their commander. So we immediately see 5 or so units taken off the field, and the balance bar swings into our favour in that moment. And now I just have to get my cavalry out of the way, let the second wave come and fight, and they did so at exactly the same place just to make it easy for me, and then the cavalry came back in to continue the fight, and I'm going to do the same thing. Curiously, this second wave actually proved harder to get rid of than the first wave, despite being smaller and being subject to low morale from army losses as well as the loss of the commander, but still in the end we convinced them all to leave, and now they're in huge trouble because they're going to be slaughtered as they attempt to escape. There's some other units across the battlefield who are going to shatter as well. Really didn't make much of an impact on our defences, so we do want to try and kill as many of them as we can, just like the last time we destroyed the Ardanians, because it will maximise the amount of time until they come back and try this again. Clearly it's not a huge problem if they do try it again, because we can just defeat them again in the same fashion, because they're not really advancing, they're not going to be bringing better units, or at least they're unlikely to, so this will keep happening. It's literally just a measure to make playing the game faster. I'd rather they didn't keep attacking over and over again so we can progress in the campaign. So there's a heroic victory. Let's take a quick look at the results. The main force of the enemy pretty much wiped out, just a couple of units alive, and those with heavy casualties. So we've dealt a severe blow to the Ardanians, which they will no doubt attempt to just replenish from and come back with another army soon, but at least this is something for now. We'll take on some captives to replenish the limited losses we took on our side and go about our business. Now, another interesting thing that we saw in this end turn sequence was a Saxon army attacking the Franks, or attacking the port that we have vision over thanks to our trade route. And this is bad news. I'd much rather the Franks were dominating the Saxons, since the Franks are peaceful towards us. This move will mean the Saxons are probably going to be more likely to attack us via a naval attack, since they have a port so close to our coast. Now, because we reached the year 400, we hear reports of a man named Attila being born somewhere in the Far East. Not really going to be a concern for us. If Constantinus had gone back to fight with the Empire, perhaps that would have been one of his concerns, but we're fine for now. We also have climate change to contend with, and And that's going to be particularly bad for Britain, as temperatures are going to be going down, the fertility of land is going to be going down, and since we're at the top of the map, we're going to be one of the worst affected powers. One thing we need to do on an unrelated note is upgrade to this auxiliary barracks here at Eboracum, which will unlock the next tier of old school Roman troops, adding cavalry, swordsmen and archers to the auxiliary spearmen we can already recruit. So that will allow us to create more powerful and more versatile armies. So we'll look forward to that, even though it's going to have a big cost on our food supply. We'll have to make sure the rest of our economy is supporting that, but for now we just need to focus on repairing up damage done by the Ebdanians. Interestingly, we see the first tiny bit of movement from the Western Roman Empire there. I'm pretty much assuming for our strategy that the Western Roman Empire will not bother coming to attack us up here because it's going to be busy, and we really require that to be the case, so hopefully these movements aren't a sign of anything to come. I got a mission to destroy the Ebdanian army, which of course I can't really do unless it comes to me, but I did note that all of their armies have really low integrity. I don't know if the AI will bother to wait to increase its integrity before attacking. I think it won't, but that might mean, if we're lucky, there's going to be a now more extended delay before they have another go at Segontium. Constantinus has made some good progress at building up his army, and I've managed to recruit a Roman pagan priest now in Britannia Superior who will help further improve public order. We're seeing an upward trend in public order now. I think if we can keep things stable and keep repelling invasions, we should be able to make everyone happy with how things are going. Now, I finally noted a use for an admiral I recruited a while ago, as you may remember, this guy Theodosius, the charismatic man, given a particularly boring job. He's got a few ships with him now, and what we can do is attack this Caledonian Separatist fleet, which is just hanging off the coast of Eboracum for some reason. I couldn't quite reach it, so I just got close to it and ended the turn. If they stay there, we'll be able to attack them. And now we have an interesting proposition from the Caledonians. They're offering one of the females of their royal family in marriage to us. So what we can do is accept this in order to improve relations, or reject it in order to pick a different wife for our son. And it is Constantinus' son who they want to marry, Constans Augustus, who has only just actually come of age to be used as an officer. So this is a pretty valuable marriage proposition, because we're going to strengthen our ties with our only and best ally. Plus, the woman herself is a sword maiden, a fighter who will improve Constan's abilities in battle if he was to be fielded as an officer. So a pretty interesting proposition. I decide to accept it, if only for political reasons. Perhaps Constantinus has higher ambitions for his heir than marrying some barbarian princess, but for now, it's what we need. I bet she thinks she'll be queen, after all this talk of her exploits on the training field. Better a king than a queen, and she will find that she is very far back in line for that position. But I know what Dad's thinking. She is a hostage. He will alter the law so that she is mine, and then I will have the right to hold the Caledonian king to ransom whenever I please. And since she is not Roman, she will not qualify as my true wife, so there will be no need for her to remain in the household. It will be like nothing's going on. And good, since I expect she will be a bore. Perhaps Mother will find a use for her somewhere. Celtic girls don't like being ordered around. The old lady will soon see to that, though. I'm sure the dogs will see plenty of her company. Thanks to some recent advances in the military escalation of our administration, we can now field heavier skirmishes. I can upgrade the levies to a version that has heavier armor and more ammunition. They cost a lot, in fact becoming the most expensive unit in the army, but hopefully it will be worth it. So the army is now pretty much finished. We can move up to begin our campaigns north once again. We're going to just guard the Caledonian capital for now and wait to see if the Picts or the Separatists make any move. But there is also that Separatist fleet which did not move from last turn, so Theodosius is going to be able to catch up to it with his ships and attack it. Now the balance bar is super far in our favour, so I could just wipe them out, but because naval battles are very rare, in my experience at least in this game, I wanted to have a quick look at it just out of interest. So the ships we've brought are mostly ramming ships rather than boarding ships like we usually use, so these guys just plough into the enemy's boats, knocking the crew off the boat and then making the ship sink, so those who remained on board won't be out of the water for long. The problem with these ships is that once they've impacted, they're kind of stuck. They can't sail backwards very quickly, and they struggle to turn because there are other boats everywhere. So you get a deadlock right after the start of the battle, and as a result of that, one of the enemy's ships is able to begin a boarding action against one of mine. So that's terrible news, because the crews on these ramming ships are tiny, because they're not meant to need those crews. My general ship under Theodosius, a massive vessel, is coming in from behind the enemy's fleet and is able to board one of the enemy's other transports. So not particularly useful, but it will stop that transport from going and boarding one of my ramming ships. And while it's delayed, one of said ramming ships comes in, smashes half the crew up, and the ship sinks. And actually, Theodosius himself only just escapes from the sinking ship, and some of his crew don't escape, they actually go down with it. So probably a bad idea to combine boarding and ramming actions like that. But anyway, soon we're able to finish off the last of the enemy ships with a quick ramming. These transport ships go down in one hit, making it particularly easy. Proper naval ships can take more than a single ramming, which really negates the advantage of ramming, because the ramming ship will just be boarded the second it's done its first action. But that's the end of that, a decisive victory, as expected, of course. So that's one of the Caledonian Separatists' hordes, in fact, taken care of. That was technically a horde, despite just being a couple of ships in the sea. So now Theodosius is going to have some options. He can either move north after this fight and go and have a look at what the Picts are doing up there, which I thought it could be an interesting option. I could just station him just off the coast of their settlement and basically just stare at them so I can see whether they're building troops. But I decided I'd rather just keep charging up public order down south, so I'm going to bring him back, and I'm actually going to disband the ship that was boarded there, since we don't really need to have a navy at this stage. So now let's continue on once again, and in a deja vu moment, it's the Abdanians sailing across to attack Segontium, and they're actually attacking with a weaker force than they usually do this time, perhaps influenced by the fact that Tullus has also received the upgraded skirmishers, so his army is a bit more powerful than usual. So we can pretty much guess what's going to happen here. There's no need to change tactics since it works so well. The enemy's army no different to what they usually bring, and probably a little bit smaller, so not going to spend much time on this one. Basically, I sent the ships out to board the enemy's ships, and the most interesting thing about that is how athletic the jumps of our men were, though one guy couldn't quite make it. He had a very, very big jump indeed, but it just wasn't quite big enough for the situation. The enemy had these trick-shotting javelineers who were throwing their arms forward, and then javelins came out of them backwards in a crazy move, trying to attack this testudo and failing, especially thanks to this wicker screen, which managed to catch half the javelins coming towards my men. So they didn't do much damage, and then they got frustrated and decided to go into melee. Again, a poor move, because now they're in melee with a spear unit, and these auxilia waiting behind can go and get involved in that as well, so we'll just wipe out those cav. So then the enemy landed their men, and of course we've got the barricades, we've got the javelins. There goes one of their units of dogs, which doesn't get its dogs thanks to it being a naval landing, so they're just a very bad spear unit. These archers are trying to shoot my javelineers at point blank range, but for some reason most of them aren't actually firing. I think I'm benefiting from a glitch here, and while they're standing there, arrows and javelins are raining down upon them and just wiping out this lightly armoured unit, which is doing nothing to avoid this fire. You can see I've got the archers up on the wall just raining arrows on the enemy's advancing formations. Half the arrows actually bouncing off the barricades in front of them because they don't know how to shoot over their own defences, but oh well. So eventually in comes the enemy's infantry to exactly the same place as it usually does. They fight for a while with my spearmen. The scout equites come from around the corner and attack them, and a mass rout begins. Some of the equites just using their javelins for fun, I guess, throwing at the enemy as they go past. It would be more productive if they just attacked them with their sword, but oh well. So with all those guys defeated, the enemy did have other troops around the place, but eventually they decided to just give up as well, realizing they were going to lose the fight. So they made the right call, both for themselves and for me. Thanks for getting out of the way sooner rather than later. That's another heroic victory for Tullus and Segontium. By protecting the Caledonian tribe from the Picts, Constantinus could get more value from his troops than he would by simply defending his own frontier. Not only was he reinforcing the loyalty of his extremely valuable puppet dynasty in the region, but his own people felt an enhanced safety knowing that the war was no longer being fought nearby. As such, the lands were seeing a period of prosperity and stability the likes of which most of Constantinus's predecessors had never witnessed. In reality, though, we have reason to believe that Constantinus was falsely credited with a lot of this progress. Some records allude to frequent huge battles around the town of Segontium in the west, where we know Gratianus Tullus was in command, but the detailed military reports that have survived say almost nothing of such events. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see the results of a betrothal and the results of a betrayal in the next episode of Fields of Mars.